This is the Stephen Mansfield Podcast.
Welcome to the Stephen Mansfield Podcast. This is the podcast where we look at our times through the lens of faith and leadership, character, and history. Glad you're with me. I'm Stephen Mansfield. Let's get to it. Now, as you've heard in the intro, this podcast is about what's going on in our times. We look through unique lenses. We're not just driven by the news cycle. We think sometimes there's a lot going on, a lot of flashy objects, a lot of loud shouting cases and causes and voices that don't need to be heeded. At least they're not the most important thing for us to be paying attention to. So we like to look at the underlying causes. We like to look at what others aren't looking at. We like to look at the ideas that shape history and the faith values that shape history and things of that nature. And there's something going on in our time right now, particularly here in the United States. Now, this podcast is very international, and I never mean to exclude those of you who live abroad. But what I'm going to describe is a particular American figure, but I strongly urge you to pay attention to this figure, as I'm going to urge all Americans to do. This is relevant globally. So let me dive in. There is a man I have deeply admired for a lot of years, whose name is Ben Sasse. That's spelled S-A-S-S-E, but it's pronounced Sass, just like I sassed you, or you sassed your mama, that kind of thing. And he is a man I have met, I have admired, I have watched. I hoped he would run for president. He has ticked a lot of people off because he is not just as strongly in the conservative camp as a lot of people wanted him to be. Definitely not a member of the left, political left in America. But the reason that I'm talking about him in this podcast is not so much that he is an American politician, though I'll describe his career in just a moment, but rather that he is dying. And as he dies, he is speaking, small p prophetically, to American culture in particular, but to the world as a whole. And I don't want you to miss what he has to say. As I have said in some posts online, I believe he has been sent to us. So let me tell you a little bit about who he is. Ben Sasse is a son of Nebraska, born there, served there, educated there, etc. His father was a high school teacher and football coach, just the all-American experience in the heartland. But Ben Sasse was particularly, if I may say so, good-looking. He was particularly articulate. He was particularly smart. He ended up getting his undergraduate degree at Harvard and then went to St. John's. Now, St. John's is one of my favorite schools because it's a great books program. It's right next to the Naval Academy there in Annapolis, and I have been there. I've never lectured there, did not attend there, but there are schools that I admire that I don't have anything to do with. I've lectured a lot at the Naval Academy, and that's why I know so much about St. John's, because it's almost literally right across the street. Plus, I have a number of friends who went there. It's a great books program. You read the great books. You dialogue in the great books. You learn the languages, in some cases, of the great books. It's intensive reading. It's intensive classics. It's intensive discussion and debate. It makes great minds. And some of my favorite people in public life are graduates of St. John's. And then he got his PhD at Yale, basically in American studies. That would be the easiest way for us to say it now. Paid attention to religious trends, wrote a doctoral dissertation that got a lot of attention, and he was no question very well educated. Harvard, St. John's, and Yale. Did brilliantly, won awards even for his doctoral dissertation. He did a number of jobs. He worked in D.C. He was an advisor. He was a counselor. Worked in Washington. Worked at University of Texas, etc. And then in 2014, he ran for the Senate and he won. He won handily. He got almost 90% of the vote and won a seat in 2014 and served there until he was very well-known conservative, did really, really well, stayed there until 2024 when he became the president of the University of Florida. Now, he wasn't at the University of Florida very long. Some issues came up. He decided to stop being president. He stayed there and continued to teach in their public policy school. I believe it's called the Hamilton School. And then he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He announced that publicly. By the way, that was just in 2025. He had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And since then, that has moved into his lymph nodes. It has moved into his liver. It has moved into his vascular system. It has moved into his lungs. And so I am asking you to pay attention to a man who, barring a miracle, will not be alive much longer. In fact, he was supposed to be dead already, but the medical community, in its amazing way, has developed some drugs that have extended his life. If you see him on TV, you will see that he often has bloody marks on his face. This is because some of the drugs that he's taking that are saving his life also cause his skin to bleed. So courageously, he will literally get on Joe Rogan's podcast, or he will literally get before 60 Minutes, and he will do an interview with these high-def cameras we have nowadays, and he looks something, as he would say, a little bit monstrous. Now, I think he's a fine-looking man, and you can see that through all the scars and all the blood and all the marks on his face that looks like, quite frankly, he's been skidded across concrete. But here's the reason I am saying all of this. I believe that as he dies, and listen, I'm a guy who believes in miracles, so may he not die. May there be a turnaround. May there be a miraculous, call it what you will, healing, reversal, defeat of cancer. And may this man live long. I don't mind telling you that I admire him so much that had he run for president years ago, and it was my hope and I was urging him to do so, I mean through other people. I don't want to speak in this podcast as though we're very close friends. We're not. We're just acquaintances. But I would have done everything I could to help him run for president. I think he would be a magnificent president. But the reason I'm bringing him to your attention is that as he dies, he is speaking to our nation great wisdom. I believe quite literally he has been sent to us. Now, I'm not trying to make him out to be some prophet, religious prophet that we all ought to shut down and pay attention to. I just simply believe that some people are uniquely gifted and called to speak to their generation. And in Ben Sasse's case, he has been given the added burden / attention-drawing issue in his life. I'm certainly not saying anybody's manipulating this, but the fact that he's dying is causing him to be heard, and that then is allowing the wisdom that I recognized many years ago in his life to be heard more broadly. So as he's dying, and that is the current progression, so I'm going to say that probably a few more times, he is speaking prophetically to our land. He's speaking about all kinds of issues. And it's been interesting to watch this go on as a man who admires him, as a man, by the way, who has also had cancer and defeated it. I'm trusting that he'll be able to do the same, although his was far, far, far worse than mine, is far, far worse than mine ever was. I'm interested to watch and pay attention to how people react to him. Because as you know, we live in contentious times, we live in angry times, we live in rude times, we live in violent times. And because Sasse was not a Trumpite, he was a conservative who would support Trump as much as he could in office when he was in the Senate, when Sasse was in the Senate. But he did not support him in everything, did not think that what he did was right, and actually voted for impeachment. One of the few Republicans who voted for impeachment for January the 6th. So here's Ben Sasse, a devoted Christian, by the way, Reformed Calvinist Christian, very strong. Here is a man who is a devoted conservative and very learned as a conservative. He can quote the great texts. He can make a case for conservatism from, I won't even go through the list of all the people in history who have written the foundational text of conservatism. He is an intellectuals. He's an intellectual, smart, gifted man, and yet good on the street, good in the practice of politics. And I'm grateful for him. A lot of people are hating on him on the right because he didn't back Donald Trump and voted for impeachment. And I hope that if you're sitting there right now hearing me say that he voted for impeachment, one of the few Republicans who did, I hope that you'll lighten up and realize that wisdom and good things can come out of the mouth of somebody you disagree with politically. Ben Sasse is talking to our nation about executive power. He's talking to our nation about family, about the size of families. He's saying things like, and this is almost a quote, "We're not getting married enough. We're not having enough sex. One of our biggest problems is the decline of our birth rates. We're sitting at about 1.6. We need to have a birth rate of 2.1. You've heard me say this many, many times in this podcast. He's saying it. He's saying it better than I say it. And he's right. He's absolutely right. We are in a demographic crisis in this country. And by the way, other countries are in a worse situation than we are, China being one of them. He's talking about technology. He's talking about what technology is doing in rewiring our brains. This, again, is a man steeped in the classics. He's talking about our taxes. He's talking about our republic. He's talking about the founding fathers and what they intended. He's talking about abortion. He's doing it compassionately. I think he would shock some of you at how he blurs the line between left and right. You're used to fire-breathing people on the extreme of one side or the other. So when a reasoned, moderate voice speaks, sometimes you're shocked by what they might say, what the Constitution allows, what the Constitution doesn't allow, etc., etc., etc. But my entire reason for recording this podcast is to tell you that we have the opportunity in this season of our nation's life to hear a man who is a Christian, who is a patriot, who has served in high office, who has served in high education, who is articulate, who is well educated, and who is, I believe, sent to us to speak to our times. He's going to talk about men. He's going to talk about boys. He's going to talk about families. He's going to talk about sex. He's going to talk about all of it. And he does it with great erudition and great clarity and great balance, and I believe he's supernaturally empowered. You don't have to buy that, but that's what I believe as a Christian in this particular case. He did an initial interview with 60 Minutes. They did a story more about him, sort of like I've just given this flyover in the last few moments. Here's this American senator. Here's this former University of Florida president. He now has terminal cancer. He's dying. Here's what he's doing. Here's what's going on. By the way, some people are glad he's dying because he didn't vote the way that the Trumpites would have wanted him to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can imagine the narrative. So the 60 Minutes story was about him. But even 60 Minutes, Scott Pelley in particular, one of the journalists on 60 Minutes, recognized the power of what he was saying and did an overtime. I believe 60 Minutes calls it an overtime. Other talk shows talk about being in the green room or something, but they did an additional hour with him, more than an hour. You'll find both of those online easily. We can put them in the show notes if the producer so desires, but they're easy to find. Just do a search for 60 Minutes and Ben Sasse, and you'll see it. You can also go to my social media, StephenMansfield.tv. I have posted it. But all that to say that there is something special, holy, supernatural, powerful, transforming, helpful happening through the life of Ben Sasse. And even if you disagree with him politically, hear him. Hear him. I will always try to speak the truth to you. I will always try to bring to the fore people whom I believe are special voices in our time. I've done it with people on the left and the right. I've done it with people I don't necessarily agree with. That, I think, is what a good person, a patriot, a person who is broad of mind and large of soul should do. And that's the kind of person I aspire to be. And Ben Sasse, son of Nebraska, well-educated, former senator, former University of Florida president, and current, I'll just continue to say, small p prophet to our generation, needs to be heard. I strongly suggest you sit with friends, sit with families, sit with your older children. Not that there's anything the younger ones can't hear, but just that they may not understand it. And listen and hear and let what this man has to say, and also the wise way he says it, shape us in our time. Hear Ben Sasse. We may not have him long. I hope that's not true. I hope he gets healed and rises to great prominence in our country again, and I will be right there trying to help him. But the natural projection of his life, the natural trajectory, is that he dies, and he does so in the next 6 months. Don't miss the wisdom, the insight, the history, and maybe even the supernatural grace that is pouring out of Ben Sasse these days.
Stephen Mansfield is a New York Times best-selling author, a popular speaker, and a frequent faith and culture commentator in international media. His groundbreaking books on faith and society include The Faith of George W. Bush, The Search for God in Guinness, Mansfield's Book of Manly Men, and Lincoln's Battle with God. Learn more at stephenmansfield.tv.